Welcome back to the Winner's Circle, everybody. I'm here today with one of my favorite guests, Harshit Kohli. He is one of our all-star judges. Our judges, obviously, they read and score your nominations, but the really great ones, the ones that participate the most and give us all their feedback, are our all-star judges. And Harshit's one of those. And so, Harshit, welcome to the Winner's Circle again, and congratulations again on being a 2025 All-Star. I know you're on track for 2026.
Thank you. Thanks, Russ. It's been a great honor to be a part of this series, and happy to work with you and collaborate with you all.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Now, for those of you that don't know Harshit, give us the kind of the elevator pitch on you and kind of what you're up to these days.
Sure. First of all, thanks for all this opportunity. My name is Harshit Kohli. Folks who don't know me, I am a senior technical account manager at Amazon Web Services, and I'm also a GenAI streaming specialist out here. So day in day out, I'm working with small medium business enterprise scale customers, helping them grow their cloud adoption, artificial intelligence adoption, and then I'm also closely aligned with the streaming analytics team, where we are trying to develop content, try to understand the customers' emotions on where that industry is evolving around. And apart from that, I'm also pursuing my doctorate in artificial intelligence from University of Cumberland, Kentucky. And then additionally, I'm writing a lot of research papers, reviewing a lot of research papers, taking participation in sort of judging activities, and then presenting in a lot of summits. And we'll be talking about a lot of summits around ideas on what we did in this past year. So yeah, so that's been the real crux of what I'm doing this year and what I've been doing for the past few years.
Yeah. Now, congratulations on working on your doctorate. I didn't know you were
No
doing
worries.
that. You do speak. You're out in the industry quite a bit. I think you were at RBLN and the MCP Dev Summit in
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
Two very different rooms. We have kind of
Yep.
security operators and AI builders.
Yes.
What was the energy like, and what are these people talking about in kind of the back rooms behind the closed doors?
Yeah. So the RBLN conference is a cybersecurity artificial intelligence conference. It's hosted at three locations every year. This was at Ruston, Virginia this year, and it was on June, if I remember it correctly, it was from June 10th to June 12th. And I mean, the RBLN or the rebellions, it is pushing the narrative that AI acceleration needs purpose-built silicon, not just GPUs repurposed for gaming. So, I mean, the way we can relate that to is the core problem, which is right now standing with all the companies, is security. So, when you are running your workloads in artificial intelligence, using the artificial intelligence models, and you're running LLMs on top of it, you have all that data, which is it is getting trained to, it is giving you great results. All of that is fine, but how does the security couples through? What happens if there is a security breach? What happens if there is a security leak? So how you're actively going to work around these security problems, governance problems, authorization, authentication problems, when you're working with all these kind of models, LLMs, and tightly coupled interfaces. So this conference was all about great people, great speakers who were talking about their experiences on how we can handle these kind of security governance and authorization authentication mechanisms alongside working on great LLM models and artificial intelligence workloads. So
Yeah, I
that was all about RBLN. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw some news coming out of RBLN. One of the quotes I remember hearing, it was a stat I couldn't believe, was that like AI has pushed phishing volume.
Yeah.
Phishing is, sending us naughty emails, getting us to click on links. Um, that AI has pushed that up 1,200%, so orders of magnitude more. And I think the complaint's been that the security industry is largely kind of hasn't really dealt with the problem. They've just shipped more product. How did that land in the room, and what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, so they were folks from the leading companies, and all of them had their own sort of experiences. So we understand that AI is here to increase your productivity, help you in the best way it can. But on the other side, people had the opinion that governance is of utmost importance, because we are not dealing with any kind of data. We are dealing with critical and sensitive data. So there could be data from healthcare industries, finance industries, marketing industries, and whatnot, right? And when we are dealing with such kind of data, governance security has to be the top notch, and it has to be the utmost priority. And everybody in the room or everybody in the conference had the similar kind of an experience or similar kind of a thought process. And that is where it was driving that conference, that okay, we understand you want to ship and produce more and more workloads, more and more products, but on the contrary side, you need to understand how the security is tied into, how the governance is tied into, and how it should shape so that that product is a full blown product with governance and security tied into it.
Yeah. Now the other conference you went to was the MCP Dev
Yes.
Summit. This is kind of now taken over our kind of API layer, right? It
Yes.
seems to
Yep.
have, although I think some of us are running towards APIs a little bit more efficient these days. But so MCP is this layer that's kind of in between systems in your AI now. It's
Yep.
this language in between.
Yep.
Um, we seem to be really crashing into this world of, kind of enabling AI in cybersecurity. What's the conversation that needs to happen between the builders and the security community that isn't happening yet?
So the MCP Dev Summit, again, it was again a nice conference which was hosted by the Linux Foundation, and there were a lot of good people, a lot of good people who were building the products, who were like displaying their ideas on what the idea is all about, and how MCP, I mean, typically what people MCP think about is just model context protocol. Okay, you send a request, you get a response, you're done with that, right? But how MCP can take the charge and and it can go beyond that normal idea of just request response model. So if I talk about my idea, right? So I presented like a working demo of a streaming MCP model context protocol, which was pushing like a real time context to Bedrock powered AI agent using Amazon MSK, which is the Amazon managed streaming Kafka, WebSockets, and IAM authorization. So what happens with the real time solutions is that real time solutions, you're getting real time events. It's coming in the milliseconds way. So the request is coming, you're sending a response, all of that is fine. But what happens if during that request response model, you get a layer where you're going to interact with those kind of responses? So let's say you are getting in the events, but at the same time, you get an AI capability which can help you to interact with that kind of responses. And at the same time, whenever the anomaly happens, you are immediately reported. So let's say if you have a very important financial application which is running 24 by 7, and at 2 a.m. midnight there is a problem which occurs, right? Now you deploy an alert solution which triggers every 15 minutes. Now a problem happens at 2:02, but the alert triggered at 2:15. Now there is a gap of about 13 to 14 minutes, and that 13 to 40 minutes is like $1 million penalty for a finance company. So we are trying to
Well,
bridge that gap, right?
yeah, it's back in the networking days.
Yep.
It was the difference between 4 nines and 5 nines,
Right.
right? It's hours.
Correct.
And when
Yes.
you're talking about hours or days or minutes in the financial world, you're talking about, if you've got billions of dollars running through that system,
Right.
well, you're talking about millions and millions of dollars in 13
Right.
seconds. Well, that's very interesting. So how are they working to solve those kind of issues?
Yeah. So so the solution which I presented was pretty much able to handle that, because what I was presenting was a difference between an original and like, so let's consider a batch kind of a solution, right? Where you have 15 minutes of alerting going on versus this solution which I was presenting as a demo, where you have a real time solution which was just making a poll, and whenever that anomaly was happening, it was just reporting right at that instance. It was not waiting for 10 minutes or 15 minutes, right? So that was a solution which I presented, and I had a log traffic flowing through the agent in real time, and then every 30 seconds an error, let's say a spike hits, the agent was detecting that spike. And if the error rate was, let's say, greater than or equal to 30%, so for that sliding window, it was reporting what kind of an issue it is, how it is occurring. It was even doing the RCA. It was going into the logs. It was trying to find out, okay, if it's a memory leak, what kind of a memory leak it is. If it's a connection closeout, what kind of a connection closeout it is, and how you can recover from this problem. And then we were utilizing Bedrock Cloud to analyze the errors and provide root cause plus remediation as well. So it was like a complete working pipeline from start to bottom, and that is where I demonstrated that solution, so that the people who are working in the real time industry, the real time solution based industry, they can cater to the solution, they can take help from the solution and build out their own products so that they can get alerted whenever needed.
Was there anything at either of those sessions that kind of changed the way you're thinking about stuff?
I would say a lot, because I still remember there were few products which were around observability and telemetry side of things, and then there were some products around the cost anomaly detection as well, right? So a lot of agents, or a lot of MCP agents, were built around the cost anomalies and observability as well. So when I saw those products, I was like, okay, this is like a game changer, because now my customers, or let's say any of the customers out there in the world, who are sometimes confused by the bills, or who are sometimes confused by the invoice, thinking about, okay, where did my model spend the cost actually, okay, what, how much each user is spending through, all of that can be handled, and there are agents who can give you an accurate ballpark number estimating that, okay, if you continue with this rate, you're going to spend this much amount of dollars with this particular LLM or this particular AI pipeline. So all those kind of predictability is super good to watch, because if you're building a new product, let's say, right? So when you build a new product, there are a lot of questions in mind. What will happen to its security? What will happen to its cost? Whether it is scalable or not. So I think those important points are to be considered, because you build a pipeline, it's just not you build and deploy it and you're done. You have to manage it as well. And with time, you have to optimize it as well. So optimization part was a real game changer for me, because that clearly defines on how you're going to use the products in the longer run.
Yeah. Now, last time we talked a lot about MCP and we just mentioned it earlier. And I think that's some of that new stuff you're talking about too. This is,
Yeah.
there's really some stories emerging here. This is kind of, MCPs with design flaws, exposed servers. You're really, you can potentially expose your supply chain from, your enterprise perspective. Should companies be nervous about their MCP? There are way too many syllables in that. MCP servers that they're already running, should they be worried about those? What should they be checking?
Uh,
How are those advancing?
I won't say that they should be worried about, because the important thing they need to understand right now, with all these evolving changes and new things coming into the market, that AI agents are not here just to suggest you right now. They can execute, they can make code changes, they can do infrastructure management. It's like a multi-step workflow right now, correct? So if we talk about the context-aware assistance as well, they can understand your code base. They can understand even your, let's say you use a Slack or you use a Teams or whatever you use. They can understand that history as well, your documents as well. So it's just not the prompt thing. So back in old days, what used to happen, you're giving a prompt, you're asking your model or your agent to work as per the prompt. But now they're even aware about the context around them, right? And that is where these multi-agent pipelines are evolving, and the companies are adapting to this, and they are using a lot of MCPs around this, because these are actually specialized agents collaborating, right? So the shift from a chat with AI to a delegate to AI is more prominent right now. So right now you can consider that, okay, I have a team of 5 developers, or I have a team of 5 engineers. Earlier people used to think, okay, AI might write everything, AI might do everything, but that's not true, right? I mean, AI is here to increase the productivity of your current engineers, who can work with AI to increase their performance. Whatever delivery they were doing in 1 year, or let's say 6 months, now they can do just in a matter of few weeks, right? So all of that, execution, code changes, infrastructure management, you can have multi-step workflow agents which can do that job for you, and you can validate and make sure that those changes are pushed effectively.
Yeah. Well, the original promise was of MCP was like, no vendor lock in, reusable,
Yeah.
standardized, all of that. And now it's got agents connecting to databases, APIs, all these enterprise systems. When you're out there, when you see a compromised MCP server, what does it actually kind of mean and look like inside of a large organization?
So, uh, first of all, let's understand what's a compromised MCP server, right? So, uh, it's kind of a server which will allow the attackers to execute data or steal some sort of credentials or perform unauthorized actions, right? So there's a risk and attack sort of a thing which is happening. And to all the companies out there, I think most of the companies have now started using the mitigation strategies, right? So you could use a sandbox execution where you can run the high risk sort of MCP tools that, let's say, interact with the file systems, or let's say they let's say they're executing some sort of code with isolated environments, right? So you can have a sandbox execution where they can run those high risk MCP servers, right? And then you can always enforce the least privilege access, and that's something which I've been repeating in multiple talks as well, that always start with the least privileges. It's always beneficial to give the minimum sort of execution rights or privileges, so that once you start with, okay, if this is not working with these least privileges, I can go one step more. So if you're giving it everything, if you're giving all the admin access, then you will never come to know, and that's like a breach of the situation, and we'll go to square one, and that's actually the problem we are trying to discuss here.
Yeah, you wouldn't give the 16-year-olds the key to the Ferrari and say, "Have at
Exactly.
it."
Yep.
So
Exactly.
it's
Yep.
it is funny. For about 2 years now, I've been trying to age the AI. And, it really did start off as a fourth grader and kind of work its definitely in postgrad. But, that experience that humans have isn't there, right? It kind of is. It logically, will hit a barrier and then try to work around it like a human. But the human really does that rationalization beforehand. And I don't see the AIs really doing that pre-work. They kind of rush into stuff like a
Correct.
21-year-old would.
Yes.
So it's very interesting. If you had other than limiting kind of access to the MCP, to the MC for the MCP,
Mhm.
what else would you tell CTOs out there to kind of, limit their liability on MCP deployments?
I would also heavily stress on consent and verification part, right? Because the user confirmation requirement should always be there whenever an AI agent is performing any high risk or sensitive kind of an actions, right? And sometimes most of the companies think, okay, hey, you know what? I have 10 engineers. Why could we just have one engineer and then rest of the nine things could be done by AI agents? I mean, absolutely, that's fine, but you still need consent and verification, and for that you need human in the loop, right? You still need to have humans who could confirm that whatever agent action is being performed, that's valid. It could be reviewed thoroughly. Let's say there's a code change or kind of an infrastructure change which is going through that agent. The human needs to have that background knowledge. Human needs to be an SME in that domain, needs to specify, okay, this action is valid. Whatever the AI agent is going to make the changes, it's cool, it's going to work out, it has been tested thoroughly, and then once they give a verification and a consent, then it should be only allowed to push through. And I think that has to be a number one thing which all the companies should adopt.
Yeah. Now, the other kind of side of this kind of massive transformation, there are all these agents that seem to be taking over all over the enterprise. And,
Hmm.
they're moving from answering questions to really taking action. I know even in my own systems now, like you said, I'm kind of watching them, giving them limited access. And then as they kind of learn, you're like, stop asking me for access. You know what you're doing. Um, it surprises me how many enterprises don't have that governance kind of framework for agents. Are you seeing that as well? And how are you kind of advising your clients on kind of this new kind of agentic model that we need to kind of, keep an eye on?
Okay, so first of all, if we are going back to the agents, we need to understand that AI agents are systems which don't just respond, right? They can plan, they can act, and they can iterate autonomously, right? So the governance problem is there, and this is where I stress the most, because the more capable the agent will be, the more dangerous the autonomy will be, right? So the number one or the core tension which needs to be understood here is that developers want speed, autonomy and less kind of brainstorming, right? And the organization needs control and they need safety, right? And what do the users need? The users like us, we need things that don't break silently, right? So if we combine everything, the key question still remains: how could all of this can be tailored together with authorization and scope? So if that has to be done, we need to understand how we are designing agents with proper authorization, with proper governance. And as always, the principle of least privilege should always be started with, because you should have agents which can do everything for you, can suffice all the user needs, but agents should always have minimal permissions for the task.
Yeah. Now, I like the way you put it. It's really an application. What's different about deploying agents versus deploying an application in your mind?
So there is, I'll say there are some core differences. When you deploy an agent, or let's say if an agent is trying to do the entire deployment for you versus you deploying an application, um, I mean, agents are smart enough right now to make all those decisions. They can understand the context. They can decide, okay, what was the behind story, what was the context behind this deployment, and they can make the changes and they can suggest you kind of sort of deployment patterns based on the previous experiences. Now, the human side of the things is, let's say if a human is deploying, although the human might have the complete background about the context, but there are times when humans might forget few things, and that's what is quite expected because we are humans, right? We might forget things. And if you're forgetting things, if you're forgetting an important context, then that deployment entirely can fail and then you'll have to retry. So it's like a waste of time and energy and resources, right? So that's one difference. But the number two point, which is the governance part, which we were speaking about, the governance when you are deploying the applications using the human way versus the agent way, we'll have to make sure that the same kind of governance and security is maintained which we were doing with the human centered deployment versus the agent centered deployment. So I think the overall difference what we have seen in the market right now, that we are still reaching that bar on how it used to be with the human centered deployment. Agent centered deployment will reach that bar sooner or later, but the only challenge right now we are trying to fill that gap is through authorization and security, and to make sure that we don't leave any kind of gaps around there around governance and security.
Well, it's a huge issue. I mean, the security community is talking a lot about agent
Yes.
hijacking. It's that man in the middle attack
Yep.
where, a bad actor takes control of autonomous agent and then redirects its actions, and they've got control of all sorts of systems. It's a pretty scary thing to think about. How real is that threat to enterprises you're working with, and are they thinking about it at all?
Yeah. So when an attacker manipulates an AI agents, right, into, let's say, doing something it wasn't supposed to do. So that is like using an agent's own permission and tools against you, right? So there are some sort of attack vendors. So it could be like a prompt injection via data, let's say. So let's say an agent is reading a file or email, or let's say a Teams message or a web page that contains hidden instructions, right? Or it could be like a tool poisoning as well, right? So let's say it could be a malicious MCP server or a compromised tool which is running some sort of a crafted response, right? And then there could be a context window manipulation as well. So all those kind of things are existing in the market. And why agents are uniquely vulnerable is just because they can execute the code deterministically, and then the permissions are static, right? So the agent can decide what tools to use dynamically, right? So when I talk about the real world scenario, I could give you an example of a poison document, right? That could be one of the scenarios. So let's say there is an agent which has access to your Slack message or a SharePoint or let's say a Teams message, right? And then someone uploads a file to a particular shared folder with hidden instructions, and the agent is able to read it. Agent reads the part of it, summarizes it, and then gives you a response. And even the hidden text, let's say there is a hidden text within that, it has an admin username and a password. So the agent has the entire permissions, and it can read everything through it, which it isn't supposed to do with that, right? That's one of the use case. And then let's say if I talk about a supply chain MCP server. So let's say a team is installing a third party MCP server for a SaaS tool, for example, and the server is compromised or is malicious from day one, right? So every time the agent calls it it will it will kind of like poison the context or inject like a kind of a steering instructions over there. And then as a whole, you will never know until somebody realizes that this particular MCP server isn't supposed to be used. So those
Yeah.
are all kind of things which I think the companies need to understand, and they need to put some tight security guidelines and governance standards around these.
Well, and it's so rapidly changing. The
Yep.
Five Eyes Alliance, I think, just moved that. It's told us that AI cyber attacks are months
Yep.
away, which I know they're already happening,
Yep.
right? But I think CISA cut the federal patch window down to 3 days because of that.
Yes.
And from where you're sitting, large enterprises have to be, going 3 days. How'd that warning land in your community?
So you're talking about the 3 days warning community landing around.
Yeah, in the enterprise. I mean, the federal patch window is now 3 days.
Yeah.
Is that kind of landing in the enterprise?
Uh, I mean that could sometime later landed in the enterprise, I would say, but not immediately, because it's still, because enterprise is a mix of all those kind of customers. You have government customers, you have private customers, you have startup customers, and some customers are very rapid, some customers are slow, some customers need to still understand the market and then act accordingly. So I mean, it's not all that okay. The same stick works for everyone. So you'll have to be very calculative and responsive based on the customer's requirement.
Yeah. Well, with all the shadow AI in the organizations these days, I don't know how IT organizations are really keeping up with this. If anybody's not aware, shadow AI is kind of like shadow tech. It's tech you bring to work that your company doesn't know about, um, or doesn't authorize. And this has got to be a compliance emergency in a lot of enterprises. What does that actually look like from inside your customer environment?
So, um, I mean, let's say if I mean, I'll talk about organizations. So if an organization has employees who are, let's say, using chat gpt, or let's say copilot or some other kind of AI tools, right, and they are pasting some kind of a proprietary code or internal documents into public AI chatbots, right? So all of this will be termed as kind of a shadow AI, right? And why this matters, and I'll give you hard numbers here. Like, so what I have found is that more than 80% of the employees use unapproved AI tools right now at work, right? And I'll say more than 78% of those AI users, they bring their own tools to work, and then they try to learn through those things, right? And of all that, the strangest part is that more than 91% of, or more than 90% of AI tools in enterprises are completely unmanaged by security.
It's crazy. I liken it to when Wi-Fi came available, and you had everybody plugging in a Wi-Fi router near their desk,
Right.
so they could move their laptops around. We all had
Yeah,
laptops on no Wi-Fi,
exactly.
and you had shadow IT those days, and it was
Yes.
a security nightmare. I remember I worked for a very large corporation at the time, and they locked down every port down to a MAC address. So they know it was only, one computer into one port because it was such a problem. And now I just don't know how you deal with it. I mean, with mobile phones in the organization, you can spin up Chat GPT on your personal device and have your work done in 30 minutes. you know, I think
Yeah.
the interesting thing, one of the interesting hard stats I heard was that they think that in the very not too distant future that an AI will do 60 hours of work a day per human.
Yes, that's true. But if you're talking about the shadow AI, right? I mean, work is an alone side of a thing, but like the router things you were talking about, right? It's super crazy, but there are more risks attached to that, right? So, I mean, the data leakage, right? That's the number one risk I would list here. Data leakage is one of the risks. Compliance violation. There could be n number of compliance, right? Let's say if you're working in a healthcare organization, there could be HIPAA, or there could be PCI. All those kind of compliances could be there. And then after all, there is a hallucination risk, right? So if there are ungoverned kind of AI outputs used in production without validation, they could hallucinate, right? Now, tying back to the strategies, I mean, you cannot ban everything. That's true. But there has to be a sanctioned alternatives for all these things, right? So you can do discover, and then you can try to find out how to use network monitoring. right? How to use tools to identify AI tool usage which are not approved. So all those kind of things I think should be done. And when you're talking about replacing the coders or the engineers with AI agents, I mean, sounds like a dream come true, but in practicality, it's not true because again, if you are doing this kind of a pattern in any of the organization, validation, credential, governance, security, all those are very, very sensitive topics. And human in the loop is always needed for consent and validation. So
Yeah.
I would take a step back, and I would suggest organizations to take a step back, and whatever kind of AI visions and AI thought process they have, definitely move forward with it, but always have human in the loop.
Well, it's funny you say that because I think Gartner put out a number that they're predicting that like 40% of the AI projects will be canceled, next year due to costs, unclear ROI, no risk controls. Do you think that number is about right? About 40% of kind of projects that are kind of hitting that?
I would say it could be true, and the reason why I say that is the kind of rush right now we have with AI is crazy, right? Every company or organization is trying to prove out their use case, work with their leadership to do something fancy in AI. Now, there could be use cases, there couldn't be use cases. But you always start with finding out a use cases which is fit for AI, right? And I don't think that that's a valid approach. Rather, if you have a use case, you should try to fit AI into that, not AI. I mean, not that, okay, I want to use AI and now I want to identify a use case. I think there has to be something done in the sort of process which has to be defined. And I think if I relate this, you might remember that's when cloud computing came into this industry. And at that time, everybody was running that, okay, we need to migrate to cloud. We need to migrate to cloud. That's true. But there still are customers who are still not ready for cloud. And we have to make them ready for cloud. That's okay. But forcing them to be on cloud is not the right approach, I'll say.
No, and there's applications for, local stuff. I mean, I've seen a lot of, especially now, it's going to be very interesting to see as we have AI skills to help us develop these infrastructures. Well, you know, now some of that stuff can come back into house. I've seen
Right,
a lot of that.
right.
You've been in enterprise tech through, like as you say, Hadoop and cloud migrations, and now AI. Every wave seemed to have a moment where it stopped being experimental and then it became infrastructure, kind of like you're talking about. Have we hit that moment with AI yet?
Not yet, I'll say. So I'll say there are huge number of companies right now who even don't know where to start with AI. So they know they have to do things with AI. They know that, okay, we have to catch up the race. We have to do some use cases with AI, but they're still not prepared. Either they have resource shortage, or they have monetary constraints, or their organization is still not prepared. They don't have that kind of that kind of an exposure towards AI. They don't know where to start with. So I think still we need to hit that mark. We are still way behind. So that that kind of a saturation we haven't reached right now.
Now, you've judged hundreds of big nominations from AI and innovation and everything else under the sun, the Cloud Computing Stratus Awards. What's something that the best companies are quietly getting right that nobody's talking about publicly?
So the number one thing, I think they're investing in their resources. That's the number one thing, because I don't agree to that concept that, okay, you can replace everybody and just put AI in front of it and then your job will be done. Rather, what the big companies are trying to invest with is they are adopting and they are moving aggressively towards AI, but they are also investing towards their resources. They are cross training their resources. They are making sure that they understand the new evolving technologies. They start adapting more and more tools into their work culture, day to day work. So let's say if somebody is working right now with six customers, they are handling six customers, for example. So how could the AI help them to achieve double number of customers? I think that's the right move and that's the right strategy, rather than replacing that person and then let AI handle everything. I think that strategy doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, Harsha, it's been a pleasure catching up with you and sucking in all your expertise on MCP and agents and all of this stuff. Really, thank you again for taking the time to talk to us and scoring all those nominations and being part of the community.
No worries. It's all my pleasure. And thank you for having me here, Russ. Thank you.